live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up.
Trent, that one's hitting a little bit different this morning. I got to be honest, that song was starting to wear a little thin on me. I was thinking, you know what? We got to change it. There's no juice. There's no vibe. There's no mojo in this program. And then all of a sudden last night, you shoot me a text and, for the folks that happen to be watching ESPN, you got to hear this.
Without Devontae Smith and Kevin, hold on. We are getting breaking news that is just in right now. Bryce Underwood, ESPN's #1 recruit in the class of 2025, is flipping his commitment to the Michigan Wolverines. He told school officials today, a huge day for Michigan head football coach Sharon Moore as they land the highest rated recruit in school history.
The highest rated recruit in school history. Trent, when you sent me the text, look, you know how it works. We stay plugged in for most of the day. We've been following the Bryce Underwood thing pretty closely here over the last several weeks, and it was sort of this back and forth thing where, Michigan was in the running, then Michigan, maybe not in the running, and then he posts some things on social media, and people are, Bryce Underwood puts up 4 emojis, and people are thinking like, no, he doesn't want to take the Michigan deal. He put up on his story, a picture of him wearing the LSU uniform shortly after the reported $10 million offer came out. And lo and behold, here we are on a Friday afternoon talking about Bryce Underwood, now committed to the University of Michigan. Trent, it's hard to put into words just how big of a deal this is. But you got the news the same time I did. When you heard it, now that you've had some time to digest it, what does this mean for the Michigan Wolverines, the Michigan football program, for Sharon Moore? What does it mean?
It's monumental, right? I mean, it's literally the biggest get that Michigan has ever got in recruiting, which is, it's unreal to even say those words, because it's not too long ago that Michigan got Jabril Peppers and Rashawn Gary and those type of players. And, as much as people love JJ McCarthy, Bryce Underwood's way past him in recruiting. Like when they were both seniors in high school, we're talking about Bryce Underwood's like on a whole different level. And Michigan 5-5, very disappointing season. People want Sharon Moore fired. This right here is exactly why you got to give Sharon Moore some time. I mean, you have to give him all the credit in the world. He spearheaded this recruitment. This was all Sharon Moore's doing. I didn't know this, but he had Bryce Underwood on campus on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I also didn't know this, but there was apparently a big fracture in Bryce Underwood's relationship with Michigan because of dating back to Jim Harbaugh and Matt Weiss when he was here at Michigan. They apparently quit recruiting him. They went down south and he felt slighted. He's like, hey, I'm in your backyard and you're not recruiting me, and I'll just go to LSU. So Sharon Moore had a lot of ground to make up, but he got it done. Sharon Moore got this deal done.
Yeah, well, Sharon Moore got the deal done, and you got to give your flowers to, all the recruiting folks at the University of Michigan. You got to give your flowers to, Champion Circle and some other generous donors that are out there. You're talking some major players that came into the fold. Like one of the dude, I think, what is his name? Larry Ellison or whatever. He's like the owner of Oracle. The guy's net worth is about $240 billion. Apparently he had a hand in, in helping make this all happen. And so it really took a a collective group of folks to be able to bring or keep Bryce Underwood in the state of Michigan. And Trent, you make a good point there that, according to that report that came out, I think it was from CBS or 247 Sports? CBS, that there was a fracture there and that Underwood did feel slighted. And it didn't seem like maybe Jim Harbaugh and Matt Weiss were going after him as hard as they could have. But, for all the people who were out there saying that, Bryce Underwood never wanted to be here and that, even with Michigan offering this money, he never wanted to be here. I think when you watch that commitment video that he put out last night, which was incredible, by the way, if you didn't see the Bryce Underwood Michigan commitment video, you need to, don't stop right now. Keep watching this show. But after this show, you need to go watch that video. That to me was all the confirmation I needed that he always wanted to be a Michigan Wolverine. I mean, he's doing the interview. I don't know who that is, if it's his dad or whoever it is, asking him as a young child, like, where are you going to be going? And he says, I'm going to be taking my talents to the University of Michigan. Like, this is something that it just seems like, he wanted to do ever since he was a little kid. And, now it's come to fruition. And again, it took a lot of people all pulling in the same direction to really make it happen. And so it's huge. And to Trent's point, there were a lot of people looking at Sharon Moore saying, he needed to be a one and done guy. He can't get it done here. Sharon Moore's not built to be a head coach. He's not this, he's not that. And Trent, for as much as you and I think, try to be level headed about it, I do think even within the fan base, it was fair to start to ask some questions about Sharon Moore as a head coach, just given what we had seen play out on the field on Saturdays. It's not that recruiting was an issue, and that was something that we talked about on Wednesday, that in spite of all of those issues on the field, that Michigan still was continuing to recruit relatively well. But you pull in a recruit like this, I mean, when speaking strictly on the recruiting trail, this is bigger than anything that Jim Harbaugh ever did. This is bigger than anything, arguably, that any head coach at the University of Michigan has ever pulled off. Now, we'll have to see whether or not Bryce Underwood lives up to the hype and he delivers on what many people think he will deliver on. But this is the type of recruit. This is the type of guy that it isn't just about one guy. It's about everything that comes along with him. This is literally the type of commitment that can change the trajectory of a program. And to be quite honest, Trent, when you're looking at sort of the hot water that people wanted to put Sharon Moore in after a 5-5 season, I think landing Bryce Underwood, this is going to change the trajectory of Sharon Moore's coaching tenure at the University of Michigan drastically.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this, like I said, it's monumental. And then, like, we're talking about Bryce Underwood, of course, but there's going to be a domino effect that comes with it. I mean, Michigan could literally have should have a top 5 class when it's all said and done, with all the players that are now being projected to come to Michigan because of Bryce Underwood. Obviously, getting them here is huge. You still got to develop them. So like I said on Wednesday, I still think this offseason is going to be huge for Sharon Moore to see what he does with his coaching staff. Does he bring Kurt Campbell back? And if he does, is he the offensive coordinator?
Well, let me ask you about that. Do you think that landing Underwood, and there's every reason to believe, I know Sean McGee, that the GM he had a big hand in this as well. And again, a lot of people played a factor into this, but do you think that landing Bryce Underwood, obviously Kurt Campbell is a part of that. Underwood was on campus this week. He was sitting in the team meetings. Presumably Kurt Campbell was a part of those meetings as well. Do you think that this commitment sort of signals that there's a very real possibility that Kurt Campbell isn't going anywhere as the offensive coordinator? And I guess looking beyond that, do you truly think it was a matter of maybe Kurt Campbell got a raw deal because he didn't have the guys he needed, particularly at quarterback, to be able to run the offense he wanted to run? I mean, that's a loaded question, but do you think that this commitment sort of shifts what we might see with Kurt Campbell as the offensive coordinator moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I'm sure Bryce Underwood is fully aware as to what Sharon Moore is thinking. Like, does that involve Kurt Campbell as your offensive coordinator going forward? I don't know. All I can speak of is what I've seen this season. And from what I've seen, I don't feel like Kurt Campbell is the guy for the job. I think that he has a role. I think he's a really good recruiter. I think if he accepts a demotion, he could be your quarterback's coach or whatever role you want him in. But I still think, as much as good of a job as Sharon Moore is doing right now on the recruiting trail, he's still kind of learning on the job, right? He's a first-year head coach. And like we both talked about, you got to surround yourself with the best coaches possible. And that starts at offensive coordinator, especially if you have a generational talent to work with. Like, you need to get somebody in there that's going to be able to work with this guy and all the talent that's going to come with him. So if Sharon Moore does keep things the same, Kirk Campbell's back, like, next season's got to be good. Or just because Michigan lands a top 5 class doesn't mean people are going to be happy. You still have to see success on the football field. And that's going to start with the coaches.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and it's something I was talking about earlier on the phone. Talking to somebody just about how big of a deal it was that Bryce committed, and it's really dawned on me and sort of hit me, especially this morning, particularly hard. Like, dude, I don't know what it's going to be like watching a Michigan offense that's explosive. Like, when you watch the way Bryce Underwood plays football, and you watch the type of offense he's used to operating in, and you throw in the type of weapons like an Andrew Marsh and an Andrew Olish, and you're going to have, Benjamin Hall, and you're going to have Jordan Marshall in the backfield. Like, this has the potential to be, compared to what we've seen this year, like what we're potentially going to see next year out of this offense. I don't know that Michigan fans are ready for it, but Trent, you're absolutely right. Like, it's still going to come down to play calling and putting the guys in the right position to be successful. And so I think, I would find it hard to believe that those conversations weren't also taking place, especially when you consider what Bryce Underwood said over the summer when he was asked specifically about Michigan, and he pointed to the lack of quarterback development. Look, I don't know what it is that they're selling in Ann Arbor. I don't know what Sharon Moore is selling. I don't know what the staff is selling. I don't know what the recruiting staff is selling. But whatever it is they're selling, granted, roughly $10 million, that also helps. But whatever it is you're selling on the recruiting trail seems to be working, because now there's another 5-star offensive lineman taking a look at the University of Michigan, currently committed to Alabama. Could be the second 5-star commitment on the offensive line in this class. You're looking at a guy like Meadows, who's a high 4-star rated was committed right to LSU to go play with Bryce Underwood. Now he's predicted to flip to come to Michigan. You're looking at a defensive guy, 5-star defensive lineman, who's looking at the University of Michigan now. So this is what comes along with signing a guy like Bryce Underwood. And when high school kids around the country look at a guy like Underwood and say, that's a guy that can deliver a national championship, and they just saw that Michigan was able to do it in 2023, now all of a sudden Michigan becomes a very appealing place to play. So this is going to be, covering this team. We talked about this on Wednesday. Covering a 5-5 team is brutal. It's difficult because it's not good. It's bad, but it's not like bad enough to where wheels are coming off and you got to pound the table and call for, the head coach to be fired. We just weren't there yet. So we were sort of in this meh, blah, nothing's really interesting phase. And we didn't know what next year is going to look like. Well, now we got a pretty damn good idea of what next year is going to look like, at least in terms of what the quarterback picture looks like. Now, Trent, one thing I do think that's interesting, and this is the article that you put out where it did talk about that fractured relationship between Underwood and Michigan and sort of how he felt slighted and all the work that Sharon Moore and his support staff needed to do to bring him back into the fold. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about Underwood's recruitment in particular is that they're still planning on going into the portal to look for a quarterback, somebody that can potentially, that Underwood can learn from. So when I first saw this and we were talking about this, I said, well, there's your starting quarterback next year. And I still believe that that's probably going to be the case. But Trent, are you surprised at all that there's this report out there that Michigan still intends to go into the portal to get a quarterback that potentially Underwood can learn from for the first year?
No, I love it. I think you have to. I think, although we all believe that Bryce Underwood's going to be an absolute star here at Michigan, we don't know how he's going to be as a true freshman. And I think you got to have a safety net, right? Like, you have to go out and, I don't know if like Miller Moss is the guy, but I'm going to use him as an example. Go out and land someone like a Miller Moss that he's your safety net if Bryce Underwood isn't ready for game 1 or game 2 of the season. Because no matter what, Bryce Underwood's going to play, but it could be like that Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy in 2021 type of a situation until Underwood shows that he's ready and good enough to start for a full game.
Yeah.
You don't want to put all your eggs in that basket though, going into 2025, because again, what if Underwood isn't ready for the spotlight in game 1 or game 2 of the season. I don't know what Jaden Davis is going to do. We don't even know if he's ready to play yet.
Well, that's another topic of conversation. I mean, so when you look at this quarterback room, Davis Warren still has another year of eligibility. Alex Orji has more eligibility left. Jaden Davis obviously sitting there as a true freshman. And according to this report, Michigan intends on going into the transfer portal to get a quarterback that, Bryce Underwood can potentially learn under, however it is that's going to work. But you got to think, I don't know, is there a scenario where Davis Warren chooses to come back for his final season? And in what role or capacity could that potentially be? With a guy like Alex Orji, who's been now relegated to strictly just a running quarterback at this point. I think if there's one thing we learned about him this season, they didn't fully trust him as a passer. They viewed him as pretty much an exclusive running quarterback. And so what role would he fit? And then I think the biggest question, and Mika from the Facebook page asks, does Davis transfer now? And, when you're talking about guys entering the transfer portal, I just think even though we're getting close to professional sports, we can, you can talk about trades and all of this stuff. I still feel weird when I talk about college kids potentially entering the transfer portal. But Trent, when it comes to Jaden Davis, I just don't see a scenario where he has a future now at the University of Michigan, given this move with Bryce Underwood. And it sounds unfortunate to say, but reality is reality. I mean, am I wrong in that? Or is Jaden Davis headed to the transfer portal here sooner than later?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would like to see him stay for another season and try to compete. But at the same time, you and I and everybody else wanted to see Jaden Davis by now. Yeah. He hasn't played a snap in it for Michigan, and he was an early enrollee. He was here for the playoff, for the national championship. He practiced with the team. The bottom line is the kid must not be ready to play for Michigan. So while, you'd like to see him continue his Michigan career, at the same time, he was a borderline 5-star recruit. At one point in time, he was the number 2 overall recruit in his class at one point in time. So he wants to play, and you have Bryce Underwood coming into the mix. Michigan's going to go out and get at least one transfer portal quarterback. So you got 2 guys potentially in front of Jaden Davis. I mean, I don't like to speculate about players' futures, but I think all signs point toward Davis entering the portal.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but again, that's where we're at in today's college athletics, and it is becoming more like the pro game, and guys got to put themselves in the best position to succeed, and I think Sharon Moore's job is to put his team in the best position to succeed, and the way to do that was to go after somebody like a Bryce Underwood, who again is like a transformational type potential guy. I mean, you got to go out and you got to do it, and you got to live up to the hype, but it feels different in Ann Arbor right now. There's a different feeling around this program. And a lot of people, 48 hours ago were looking at 5-5 and they were thinking man, if Sharon Moore stays, if they don't make some serious changes here, you're headed back to the dark ages, you're headed back to the Rich Rod era. Those conversations were happening. And when you wake up this morning after the news we got last night, it feels like this program is on a different path. And that just speaks to how powerful it is when you can get a guy like Bryce Underwood to stay home. I mean, it's breaking news all over the place. It was the talk of social media, at least in the sports world last night, and continues to be that way. But yeah, particularly with Jaden Davis, I do think it's unfortunate because there was an opportunity, regardless of what was discussed or promised or anything. I'm not going to speculate on that stuff anymore because at this point, I don't even think it's worth it. But regardless of whatever discussions took place, if there was an opportunity for Jaden Davis to make his case on the football field, it was this year. Michigan did not have a quarterback. Let's be real.
Yep.
For as good as Davis Warren has played down the stretch, and I commend him for getting better and avoiding turnovers and helping to guide Michigan the best he can, Michigan did not have a quarterback this year. And if Jaden Davis was able to take that opportunity and do something with it, maybe there is some sort of a glimmer of a future or hope or something for him next season. But if Michigan's goal is to go into the portal, get a veteran transfer quarterback that Bryce Underwood can learn from or learn alongside until he's ready to go, and that could be week 1, could be week 3, week 4. I find it hard to believe we're not going to see Bryce Underwood starting at quarterback in 2025. To me, it's just a matter. It's a matter of when. Right. It's a matter of when, not if. with that being the case, there just isn't a place for Jaden Davis here. And so it's unfortunate that with this season going the way it did, with it being like, completely wide open, we didn't get to see him. Now, I will ask one more question about the Jaden Davis thing here. Do you think, given this news and given where things are headed, do you think that maybe that increases the likelihood we'll see Jaden Davis down the stretch, if for no other reason than to try to showcase his talents elsewhere?
Maybe, but like I said before, I think if he plays, it's going to be this weekend. I don't think you're going to see Jaden Davis against Ohio State, barring an injury to Davis Warren or Jaden Davis coming in and lighting it up against Northwestern. I just don't think that Michigan's going to play Davis in that situation when you're trying to beat your arch rival, especially when the kid's probably not ready to play. I just don't think they're going to throw him in there against Ohio State. So if we see Jaden Davis, I think it'll be this weekend, and that's only if Michigan gets up big, right? Like Michigan's offense isn't all that explosive, so it's not like we know that they're going to get a huge lead on Northwestern when they're going to throw in the backups and let them play, because at the end of the day, Michigan wants to become bowl eligible, and this is going to be your best chance to do so. So I don't think you're just going to throw in the towel and say, Jaden Davis, go in and play. So to answer your question, no, I don't think this news makes it more likely that Davis is going to play. I just don't think so.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, in a fantasy world, we get to see him, but reality, I think it's going to keep playing out the way that it has played out this year. Davis Warren, Alex Orji. Scott Patton from the Facebook page says, don't forget Chris Breiler, yours truly. Yeah, I had somebody ask me how much I also put in on, the financial side of helping to bring Bryce Underwood here. I didn't, it might come as a surprise. I didn't offer any money. What I did do is I got his cell phone number from somebody I called, and I left like a 15-minute voicemail where I sobbed most of the time and begged for the other part of the time. And look, I'm not going to say that was the difference maker, but when you got a grown man calling you, crying and sobbing and begging, like I got to believe that has some sort of an impact. So I'm going to take some credit, Trent. I'm going to take some credit for Bryce Underwood. Not a lot.
Well, I'm guessing the whole Underwood family probably watches this podcast 3 times a week, and I'm sure it has influence.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. We have some pull in this community. Going through. By the way, Trent, did you happen to buy one of those $1,900 signed autograph cards from Valiant yet? For those of you that don't know, the merch is already up. You can go get your Bryce Underwood, or I think you can pre-order the Bryce Underwood jersey, t-shirt sort of deal. They're also offering trading cards. There are 19 of them to be exact, which obviously 19 is the number that Bryce Underwood wore. And I think to keep in line with the number that he wore in high school, the price for those autographed cards is $1,900. So for those of you, you're in the Christmas spirit, you got some extra cash you want to throw around, $1,900.
Just buy all 19 of them. Well, I just do it and just sell them.
It's like an investment. It's like investing in Bitcoin, except it's Bryce coin, right? Look at more ideas every time we get on here. I've just got another idea.
Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness. Let's go through some of these comments and questions. Trent, anything else? I mean, I don't know really what more to say about what happened here. It's as big as it gets. It's a program changer. It's a game changer. It's a game changer for Sharon Moore. It just feels like in the very near future, it's hard to see a scenario where Bryce Underwood is not in the Heisman conversation. It's hard to see a scenario where Michigan is not a legitimate player in the college football playoff. And then when you look at what Ohio State has done on the recruiting trail, between the pieces that are falling into place, it is setting up for just an epic battle between Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten Conference, with so much on the line. And with the new look college football playoff landscape, whereas before I was like turned off by the idea that Michigan and Ohio State might play multiple times, I'm going to bring it on. Bring it on. Like, I am really, when it comes to NIL, playoff expansion, conference realignment, the Bryce Underwood commitment's got me rethinking. Connor Stallions?
Dude, yeah. I mean, we don't have to go into the whole Connor Stallion stuff, but that had to play a hand in his
Okay, hold on a second. Let's pump the brakes here, because I do see it. There's a lot of people celebrating Connor Stallions today, and I've admitted that I may have been wrong about Connor Stallions.
No, you did admit it.
I did admit, well, I did admit that I may have been wrong. I didn't say I was wrong. I said I may have been wrong. And all along, even though I've been frustrated with some of the shit that's come along with everything that went down last year, I have been pretty consistent on this, that the guy loves the University of Michigan. You can't question his work ethic, but there are a lot of people today that think Connor Stalions in it. I can't tell. Is it like just the novelty of it that people are giving him credit? Or Trent, do you think he legitimately played a role in bringing, you've got the owner of Oracle out there worth $240 billion. You've got, a few
Passes.
other billionaires that are, Passes is a part of it, but you've got some people, some Michigan alum who are very wealthy, who are also involved in this thing as well. I mean, do you think Connor Stalions played a legitimate role in helping to bring Bryce Underwood home?
Verbally, I think so. I mean, I don't know how much he actually did to help Michigan get Bryce Underwood, but I think we can all safely say that Connor Stalions is in love with the University of Michigan and will do whatever he can to help Michigan succeed on the football field. And you know what, man? He started coaching Bryce Underwood a few weeks ago. And when you know it, that's when a lot of this stuff started popping up, was a few weeks ago. Now, I think, and it just all might be, I don't know. Yeah, I think that Connor Stalions had a little bit of a hand in it. I'm not going to say that he had a huge part in it, but I think he did some talking to Bryce Underwood.
Well, I don't think there's any question he talked to him. I mean, he was on the coaching staff. He definitely talked to him, and he probably expressed his love for Michigan, but I don't know.
Come on, man. Just say that Connor did something good.
I saw somebody on Twitter post the Bo Schembechler statue, and the addition was in bronze. It's Connor Stalions behind Schembechler, like poking over his shoulder, like we might be going a little too far there. But I mean, we asked the question when he joined the coaching staff. I said, will it be more helpful or more hurtful to the recruitment of Bryce Underwood? And clearly it wasn't hurtful to it. So I don't know what role, if any, but when you got a guy working on the inside, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could, put it this way, it could not have hurt anything that Connor Stalions was around Bryce Underwood for the amount of time that he was. It could not have hurt it.
Yeah. Here's the other question I guess I would ask. When you get a guy like this, I mean, when you're recruiting high-level players in general, but especially when you get a guy like this, there's a lot of talk and chatter. And again, it comes from a certain segment of the fan base, and it's a name that shall not be named on this show anymore. But there are people that are very much eager to hear this sort of, what happens with this NOA and what's next for Michigan as far as the sign stealing thing and, the NCAA investigation and what it's going to mean for Michigan moving forward. I have got to believe, Trent, I've got to believe that those conversations at this level, when you're talking about shifting pieces and offering upwards of $10 million. And you're getting into that level and you're bringing in high level executives. I would imagine that part of the conversation that's had with Bryce Underwood is about what's going on with this. Am I going to be able to play? Are there going to be issues? Will we be ineligible to participate in the college football? Those types of conversations I would imagine are taking place. Do you think that Michigan landing a guy like Bryce Underwood is sort of a signal to what potentially is or is not coming as it relates to that NCAA investigation?
Yeah, I think so. I would put a lot of money on the table that I do not have, saying that Bryce Underwood, that's been a big talking point to Bryce Underwood and all of these top level recruits that are interested in Michigan and likely coming to Michigan at this point in time, is about the NOA and what's going to happen, which further indicates that Michigan feels pretty safe in it all. Like there's going to be no bowl restrictions, like obviously probation and maybe some fines here or there, but I don't think that anything serious is going to come of it, or Michigan's recruiting class wouldn't be looking the way that it is. There's no possible way.
Yeah, it seems hard to imagine that Michigan would be able to make these types of moves. And when you have like all of this financial backing behind it, like there's contracts in place, there's agreements in place, people are making life decisions based on these things. It just seems hard to imagine that all of this good momentum for Michigan would be happening on the recruiting trail if there was truly a belief that, something negative was coming down the road as it relates to the NCAA investigation. So, we'll see what happens with that. I can't imagine it's going to be nothing. There might be some sort of financial penalty. Most of the people that were involved in that are gone. Connor Stallions is gone. Jim Harbaugh is gone. A lot of the other, I guess, I don't want to call them factors, whoever it is, like a lot of those guys are gone. And I think what's remaining in Ann Arbor, unless you want to try to knock Sharon Moore for deleting some text, which didn't sound like he was, too.
Yeah, I'm ready for those to come out whenever that happens too.
I would like to read the text. I would like to see him. And Sharon Moore said he was eager for those to come out as well. He didn't seem to think there was much in it. So I did see somebody ask, Trent, what page in the manifesto do you think all of this was? I'm
guessing like 345.
I would say page 146.
Because it was just getting started, huh?
Team 146, right? That would be Bryce Underwood. So I think, kind of, maybe I'm getting too far down the Connor Stallions rabbit hole. Once again, Wes says, get Connor on the pod. Lincoln Riley for OC. I mean, maybe there's a chance Lincoln Riley gets pushed out.
Rich Rodriguez for offensive coordinator.
No. Speaking of Rich Rodriguez, isn't that crazy? I sent you that text the other day. I did not know this until I started looking at the schedules, but not to be a Debbie Downer here, but Michigan is only having 4 away games this year, 8 games at home, 4 games away. Michigan has already lost 3 games on the road. If they do not beat Ohio State in Columbus this year, it'll be the first time in over 14 years since 2009 that Michigan has gone an entire season without winning a road game. Trent, that's mind-blowing, particularly when you look at the games Michigan has had on the road so far: at Indiana, at Washington, at Illinois. 3 winnable games. We talked about that on Wednesday. You got to go get it. I mean, look, prior to the Underwood thing, I think you could look at that and be like, see, this is another indictment on Sharon Moore at Michigan, and they can't get it done, blah, 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 blah. Now I don't give a shit. I mean, I would like them to beat Ohio State, but maybe that's the bigger question, is like, how much of that stuff matters to you for the remainder of the season, given what just happened on the recruiting trail?
Man, obviously you want to beat Northwestern, you want to beat Ohio State. But I was already going into that Ohio State game like, Michigan's probably not going to get it done this year. And I don't even know if it's going to be close either. So with that thinking, it's like, hey, on to 2025, like on to see what Michigan's going to do with this roster, do with the coaching staff. Get Bryce Underwood on campus early, get him working with the team, and just see what happens. Because right now, all the focus is turning to 2025.
Yeah, I agree. And All Hail Michigan from the YouTube page says the only thing that pisses him off or her off is about the NIL. It's about 3 years late. Yeah, I mean, you can say that, but if you take a look at the last 3 years, you're not going to complain about anything that happened on the field. It went about as good as it could possibly go for the University of Michigan. And so prior to 2021, like let's say, in 2020, after that 2-4 season where Michigan didn't win a single home game, by the way, that 2-4 COVID season, somebody would come to you and say, look, the next 3 years, you're going to be in the college football playoff. You're going to win 3 consecutive Big Ten championships. You're going to beat Ohio State 3 consecutive times. You're going to win a national championship. After that, Jim Harbaugh is going to bolt to the NFL. You're going to get Sharon Moore as your head coach. You're going to go 5-5, but you're going to sign Bryce Underwood. He's going to bring a lot of talent with him, and you're going to go on another generational run. I don't think anybody is complaining. All of a sudden, to me, 5-5, 6-6, 5-7, whatever the hell this season ends up being, I don't care, because Michigan did it the right way, I think, to start. And they won with the guys they recruited and brought in and developed. And they won a national championship that way. But in the post-era, the post-Jim Harbaugh era, the new way to do this is what we're seeing play out, where if there is a guy who can change your program, you've got to move heaven and earth to try to get him. And that's exactly what the University of Michigan did. And I think a lot of people around the country are looking at Michigan and saying, oh, shit. Here we go. We thought they were going back to the dark ages. We thought they were about to fall off a cliff, and now here they are. They're willing to play ball, and they're bringing in top talent. And so look, you can say that Michigan's late to the table on NIL, and I guess on the surface you would be right because they were hesitant to dive in and they wanted to do the transaction or the transitional versus transactional or transformational.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell that saying was. We knew that Michigan was slow playing NIL, but it was okay because they were winning on the field. But given the way this has all played out previous 3 years and now what we're seeing on the recruiting trail, I mean, you can be angry that they're late, but I find it hard, even at 5-5 right now, like dude, this commitment has completely changed. I feel like a new man. I feel like this is a new team. We have a new outlook on life. Like,
I literally texted you last night and was like, man, I'm not like this Northwestern game. I have no feelings towards it whatsoever.
Don't care.
Then 5 minutes later, Bryce Underwood commits to Michigan, and it just changed. It changed everything.
Well, but here's the thing. I still don't care about the Northwestern. It doesn't matter.
Well, no, I don't either.
It doesn't, like, nothing. Just get us to the 2025 season now. That's where we're at. And I think somebody asked in the question here if Underwood is 100% all in. It's from the Facebook page. Bradley William from the Facebook page. If Bryce Underwood is 100% in, will he sign in the early period December 4th? I think so. Yeah. I think he's going to sign early. I mean, I think he's going to try to get on campus as soon as he can. Local kid. I don't think there's any question that Bryce Underwood is 100% in. There is zero chance that he's going to flip back. I think there was a lot of, and when you read the reporting, like the wheels were set in motion, like back in September, these conversations were really starting to happen. And then I think the confidence was high in October that it actually was going to happen. And then it was just a matter of like putting in the finer details. And now here we are, almost near the end of November, and it's a done deal. And so, yeah, regardless of whether or not he signs in the early period, I do think he will do that. But regardless of whether or not he does, I mean, he's 100% a Michigan Wolverine, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that he signs December 4th. That shop that him and Valiant opened up,
well, there's
start ordering December 4th because that's the day that he can sign with Michigan. Yep. So I think there's no doubt whatsoever Bryce Underwood will sign with Michigan on December 4th.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Just going through Matt Kirby saying that we are relevant. Yes. Yeah, Michigan's always relevant. Even when we're not, we are. Let's see. Birds are singing. Sun is out. What a glorious day. I don't know where you're living, but not here. Matt Kirby's out west, though. He's in California. Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of what you were talking about, Trent, with the thing with Valiant. CJ Frazier from the Facebook page, he says he thinks the business ventures show you that he's all in. Yeah, I mean, they're launching apparel. Like, he's already got a page up on Valiant's site, and they're starting to pre-sell merchandise. Like, he's all the way in on this thing. And again, these were conversations that were taking place well before the news broke. Brandon from the Facebook page says, I was wrong, and I'm happy about it. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us were wrong when it comes to Bryce Underwood and how we thought it was all going to play out. I mean, you and I talked pretty openly about it. I didn't think he was going to flip. I didn't think he was going to come to Michigan. And I think that, you sort of took what he said over the summer about lack of quarterback development. And then again, you're reading the tea leaves and he's sort of responding to these little things that are coming out there. Like, you remember that first report where it started at 5 million, right? And somebody reported 5 million. And I guess Bryce went on some Instagram post and he responded with 4 emojis, like laughing emojis. And people were like, well, that's over. Bryce is laughing at that. And then, what was the next thing? The reported $10 million offer. And then Bryce responded to that on his Instagram by sharing a picture of him wearing the LSU uniform. And then honestly, it really just feels like they were all just playing us the whole time. They knew what was going on. They were having fun with it. They were watching insiders break this and people talk about it and share this and speculate there. And behind the scenes, they knew exactly what was going on and what was going to happen. And there were a lot of us that were wrong. And I think that, this is just, you don't see Michigan recruit at this level. And I think that this is something that I talked about earlier as well in a separate conversation, but I take Jeremiah Smith as a perfect example. Trent, you and I have talked about a wide receiver like Jeremiah Smith and said Michigan will never get a guy like that. Michigan can bring in good wide receivers, but they'll never get a Jeremiah Smith. Well, when you bring in a Bryce Underwood, now all of a sudden a Jeremiah Smith type wide receiver, that's very much on the table for the University of Michigan, assuming that they can open up the offense, and there's every reason to believe that they will. And for as crazy as college football is today, Trent, there is a chance that actually Jeremiah Smith himself could end up in Ann Arbor in years to come playing with Bryce Underwood. I mean, that's where we're at in college football. So once again, yes, well, a lot of us were wrong when it came to Bryce Underwood and the decision that he was going to make, but having him in the fold, man, it just opens the door to so many other types of recruits that it just felt like Michigan was never going to be able to get their hands on. This is a game changer.
Yeah. I didn't know that Michigan would actually flip Bryce Underwood, but I was pretty open about, I felt like there was too much smoke out there. I thought Michigan actually had a shot in doing so. I didn't know if it could actually get the job done or not. But even that post that Bryce Underwood put up on his Instagram, the key word there was likely. Like, he didn't actually completely shut it down. He had likely in there for a reason. I feel like he was a type of a player who really didn't want all of his business out there, which is partially probably why it sounds like his family was a little upset with the reported numbers that came out. They're a little more behind the scenes. I mean, not many people even knew that Bryce Underwood was on campus this week for Michigan, at Michigan.
And that's what Bobby says here. Bobby from the Facebook page, he says, I read today Bryce was at practice all week. Is that true? Can't imagine that being the case without someone leaking it. Sure sounds like it was true.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just, I feel like he's not a kid who wants his name and image in the spotlight like a lot of these kids do, where everything that gets talked about between the coaches and team and themselves, it gets leaked. And although he's the number one overall player in all of 2025 recruiting, I don't think he's that way. And I think that's why he was trying to shut the stuff down and kind of basically troll the Michigan fan base when he posted that to Instagram.
Yeah, and Bobby, I mean, according to that report from CBS Sports, not only was he at practice all week, but he was like on Sharon Moore's hip. He was like,
he was shadowing.
He was sitting in the meetings, like the coaches' meetings, like he was involved in everything. And I think he really got, I mean, talk about opening the doors and pulling back the veil and saying, this is what we got going on here. Like, Bryce Underwood got to see all of it. And I think, like, here's the other part of this, man. It's insane to me, and I know that there's some bias here, but it is insane to me that anybody would ever want to play for Brian Kelly. It's just, you watch this guy on Saturdays, you see him in his interviews, some of the antics. He just seems like one of the most unlikable head coaches at any level in the entire country. And the fact that LSU isn't doing well and Brian Kelly has sort of had his moments. I mean, how much of that, let me ask you this, because again, according to that video that Bryce put out, I mean, he's talking about being a Michigan Wolverine when he's young. Sounds like he wanted to be that, but, felt a certain way about the way Harbaugh was recruiting him or not recruiting him. How much do you think this flip had to do also with the fact that LSU was also having a shitty year and Brian Kelly isn't doing himself any favors?
Yeah, clearly that does not hurt at all. I mean, we could be talking a completely different situation here. If LSU was 10-0, 9-1, and Brian Kelly had his locker room under control, but it's the complete opposite. They've now lost 4 games in a row, I think 3 in a row. And Brian Kelly is always in somebody's face. He's getting yelled at on the sidelines by his own players. He just doesn't have the team in control at all. And honestly, Brian Kelly's future at LSU could be in doubt as well. So none of that hurts this Bryce Underwood story whatsoever.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But man, that appeal of being the hometown hero sort of thing and the way he played that up in that video, like it's hard not to be in your feels about that one. Lydia from the Facebook page, she says, we need some new coaches. Do you think they promised new additions to the coaching staff as enticement to Underwood? I would want that if I were his parent. Trent, we did touch on that a little bit earlier in the podcast, particularly as it relates to Kurt Campbell and his role as the offensive coordinator. But regardless of what they do with Kurt Campbell or Wink Martindale, it stands to reason that we are going to see some shakeup with this staff heading into year 2, right? Or do you think it's very possible it is Kurt Campbell, offensive coordinator? It is Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator, and Kurt Campbell obviously still going to serve in the capacity as quarterback's coach if that's the case. Do you think that part of this deal to bring Underwood had to do with maybe changing the staff around a little bit, or do you not really put much stock into that it was the other things that we talked about?
I mean, I've got to think that there's going to be some sort of a shakeup with the staff. I don't know.
I can say this: it would be a little strange, right? If Sheromore was talking about a shakeup with the staff with Kurt Campbell sitting at the table right next to him, right? Like you can't have, like we're going to bring in a new OC, we're going to do that, we're going to, so it seems a little bit strange. But
unless Kurt Campbell knows, maybe, I mean, that could be a conversation that's been had between him and Moore. Hey, look, man, I want you on staff. I want you to become our quarterbacks coach. You're going to lead that position, but I've got to find somebody else at offensive coordinator. Sherrod Moore has been pretty transparent about what he is willing to do, benching players when needed.
Yeah.
Hopefully he feels the same way about his staff. So, I mean, that really could be a conversation that has been had with Kurt Campbell. Like, we don't know what's being talked about behind closed doors. So, I mean, I got to hope that there's some sort of a shakeup. I don't know if it's going to revolve around Kurt Campbell or not, but there's no way that the same exact staff can go into 2025 with their jobs the way that the season has gone so far.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. Like to me, Lydia, the only person that really makes sense outside of some other like positional coaches, and you know, I don't know. A lot has been made about the wide receivers and Ron Bellamy, and is he bringing in the right guys? And are they, the wide receivers have not looked good this year, but it's hard to look good when you don't got a good quarterback that can throw you the ball. And so you're really trying to, and that goes back to what I said about Kurt Campbell. Like Kurt Campbell got a lot of shit for how bad the offense looks. And there are some play calls this year that have been like, what the hell are you doing? And why are you doing it in that moment? And again, we're just people on a podcast here. Like they know way more about football than we do, but we're not the only ones that see it. Everybody has looked at the offensive play calling this year and just questioned it. But I do wonder how much of that is the result of simply just not having the right pieces in place, not having the guys necessary to be able to run your offense. So is that a Kurt Campbell issue for not being able to adjust to his personnel? Is it the personnel issue and they just weren't capable of running the type of offense that Kurt Campbell wants to call? I'm not exactly sure, but Lydia, overall, I'm certain that there had to be some conversations that were talked about with this staff, and in particular, what this offense was going to look like. There's no way in hell Bryce Underwood would want to come play in an offense that has looked the way it's looked in 2024. There had to have been some conversation about some changes that we're going to see offensively.
Yeah, I would definitely think so. And obviously, Michigan must be selling something right. And obviously you could give Kurt Campbell the benefit of the doubt for this season because clearly the talent level is not very high offensively. But also, I personally think great coaches can make an average team look good. And I don't think anything about this Michigan offense has looked good other than Colston Loveland. Kalel Mullings looked really good early on in the season. Offensive line hasn't been that good. Quarterback play hasn't been good. The running game has been bad the last 3-4 games. Receivers have looked bad. Like nothing about this offense has looked good. And again, I think you go look at the coaches and see what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, Donovan Edwards has struggled. This was supposed to be the big year, and it just this offense has really, really felt stuck in the mud all season long. And how much of that can you put on Kurt Campbell? We'll find out. We'll find out if he remains in place. Bottom line is the offense has to look different. It just has to look different. And there's no way in hell that Bryce Underwood would sign up to play in this offense as is.
They're selling him something.
Right. Whatever they're selling, whatever they're showing him up on the big screen, they're saying, look, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what we're going to be running. It looks different than what we've seen this year. And that's what I'm excited about, because even when Michigan was winning at a high clip from 2021 to 2023, there was still an aspect of this offense that just was like, it was ground and pound. It was bully ball. It was just sort of force your way. It was that whole boa constrictor thing. It wasn't a Ferrari. It wasn't electric. There wasn't a lot of like big type plays happening. And I think that even though they were winning, a lot of fans, myself included, wanted to see an aspect of that in this offense. And I think that we are going to get that with Bryce Underwood and the weapons that he's going to bring along with him. I just think that we are going to see a vastly different Michigan offense in 2025 when number 19's on the field.
I think you have to, because the thing with the transfer portal, a kid like Bryce Underwood, if this offense looks the same next year and he's handing the ball off 40 times a game and their offense can't click, he's gone. mean, that's the reality of it. You could enter the portal and he could go to LSU or Alabama or Georgia or wherever he wants to go because he's that good. Like he would have that capability of leaving Michigan if Michigan doesn't hold up to their end of the bargain. So there has to be some sort of change moving forward.
I love questions like this. I really do. On Wednesday's show, we talked about whether or not you would want a guy like Bryce Underwood or the top offensive coordinator in the country. By the way, Trent said he would rather have the top OC. He might be rethinking that today now that Michigan actually has Bryce Underwood, because I'm sure you'd be fine keeping Bryce Underwood and having Kurt Campbell
number 2 and having the number 2 offensive coordinator out there.
But Sean Patrick from the Facebook page, he says getting Bryce Underwood is almost a bigger win than beating Ohio State this year. # change my mind. Trent, I'm going to ask you it this way. Do you think, like, if you had 2 buttons on the table and one button is Michigan beats Ohio State in Columbus this year, guaranteed, no questions asked. The other button is Michigan loses to Ohio State, but you get Bryce Underwood on the recruiting trail. Which one are you going to push? Now, I just want you to think about this a little bit. I understand the long-term advantage to having Bryce Underwood in Ann Arbor. But if this 5-5 team, could be 6-5 by the time they go to Columbus, could be 5-6 by the time they go to Columbus. If this team beats that Ohio State team, what that would mean for Ryan Day, what that would mean for that fan base, all of that is part of the mix. So you could guarantee the win versus Ohio this year, or you could keep Bryce Underwood. Which one are you pushing?
Well, after seeing Michigan play this season, 5-5, I would push the Bryce Underwood button. However, if Michigan was 10-1, even 9-2 entering Ohio State, and they had a chance for a playoff, I would push the beat Ohio State button because I think it would mean so much more to win 4 straight games. However, if Michigan won this season, it would be quite funny because Ryan Day would be in a lot of trouble losing to a likely 6-5 Michigan team. So, I mean, that would be really hilarious down in Columbus, and Michigan fans would rejoice.
The question really is, would the meltdown in Columbus be worth giving up Bryce Underwood? And it's damn close. It's damn close because they would be freaking out down in Columbus if this Michigan team went down there and whooped that ass once again for the 4th straight time. But yeah, long-term, bigger picture, obviously you want a guy like Bryce Underwood because even if you don't get the win this year, that rivalry is setting up to be something incredible for the next, 3 to 4 years.
I mean,
however
let's
long.
be honest. If Michigan was 10-1 or 9-2 entering Ohio State week, it's probably because they had pretty good quarterback play this season. And losing a guy like Bryce Underwood wouldn't sting as much because Alex Orji or Jaden Davis or somebody would have stepped up and played really well this season. But with the quarterback play that we've seen at Michigan, like, you've got to go out and get somebody really talented. And Michigan landed the biggest possible fish out there.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's other pieces. The next Blake and Hassan is what Darren May says from the Facebook page. I mean, you have Benjamin Hall in the backfield. You got Jordan Marshall in the backfield. Probably going to see a little bit of Jordan Marshall this weekend, it sounds like, from Sharon Moore. There are still pieces that are here. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Tyler Morris. Samaj Morgan is going to be back next year, and say whatever you want about Samaj Morgan again. It's hard to be an elite wide receiver when you don't have a great quarterback that can get you the ball. And I'm not trying to disparage the quarterbacks that are there, but let's be honest. Like, Michigan just hasn't had a guy at quarterback all season long. And I got to imagine that's difficult as a wide receiver to try to deal with it. Now, Colston Loveland, he's the exception to the rule. He's the guy that can make it happen no matter what. The catch radius is massive. Just get it within the vicinity. He'll catch everything that comes his way. And hopefully Andrew Olish is going to be that type of guy as well. You got Marlon Klein that's going to be there. And so I just think that we're going to have to be careful not to do what we did heading into 2024, right? We're going to have to be careful to temper the expectations. Just kind of let it all play out in front of you. I don't know what this team is going to look like, but I got to believe what we're going to see next year is going to be considerably better than what we've gotten out of the Michigan Wolverines this year.
I mean, I'm guessing this team's going to look essentially brand new. I think they're going to dominate in the transfer portal. You're probably going to see some true freshmen play next season. I think Michigan's going to just load up with veterans in the portal, and it's going to look new next season. I really think so.
Jesse from the Facebook page says he'd rather beat OSU this year than take Bryce Underwood. I mean, look, you know, it would be amazing. It would be amazing to just if there's one group, like, that's the thing that always strikes me about Ohio State fans is, like, they've shown up this year and, you know, they're talking all this trash. And, you know, I saw one guy the other day, he was like, Michigan fans need to be humble. Like, you're not this and you're not that. I'm like, you guys haven't won anything of value since 2014. You haven't beat Michigan since 2019, and you haven't stopped running your mouths the entire time. Like, you still run the conference. Yeah, I mean, Michigan is having a down year. There's no question about it. But if you thought Michigan was going away, I mean, last I checked, the Wolverines are still the reigning national champions. The Wolverines still, I think, even in a down year, could make the case for being the kings of this conference, given what's transpired over the last 3 years. And in spite of a down year, if they come back and they're right in the mix next year, like, I think you could argue that maybe Ohio State's time as being like just the year in and year out juggernaut in this conference, those days are over. You got Oregon in this conference now. USC down year, but I don't think they're always going to be down. Michigan's not always going to be down. This is going to be a different type of conference moving forward, and I think there's going to be a lot more parity in it. And I think Ohio State fans are going to have to come to terms with the fact that all the other teams now are willing to pay players and play the game, and especially the Michigan Wolverines are willing to dive headfirst into NIL. And so, yeah, we don't give a shit about paying for players now. That was then. That was last year we were talking about that. We don't care now. We'll buy anybody.
And Chris, don't forget about
we'll outpay. We'll perform better in NIL too. I mean, anything that Ohio State has done, Michigan just shows up and says, okay, we'll do it, and we'll do it better. That's just how it works in Ann Arbor.
And Chris, don't forget about Indiana. They re-signed Kurt Signetti. Like, they're going to be around for a while. Yeah. And I mean, and I'm kind of joking, but I'm not, because I think Kurt Signetti, I think he's going to keep that team respectable and pretty good for the foreseeable future. I think kids are going to want to gravitate to play for him. And I mean, I think the Big Ten, I think it's loaded. And
you don't think Indiana's a fraud? You don't think we're going to find out?
No, I don't think they're a fraud.
What happens if they go into Columbus this weekend, they lose by 30? Will that change your mind?
I mean, maybe a little, but I don't. Put it this way. Ohio State's favored by like 13 or 13 and a half right now. I think Indiana covers that easily. I think Ohio State wins the game. It's in Columbus. I think they win, but I think Indiana plays them tough. I mean, Ohio State, they're vulnerable. They're definitely beatable. And Indiana has one of the better offenses in the country. I think they're going to move the ball up and down the field and be competitive.
Yeah, no question about it. This is a good question, Larry. I haven't really dove into that and looked into that too much. Larry from the YouTube page says, how many guys that are eligible for the draft decide to come back because of Underwood coming? You know, I'm not so sure that Bryce Underwood is going to be enough to make anybody who is considering the NFL decide to come back. I do think Rod Moore, right, returning for another year. I think that's something that's going to happen. Any chance Derek Moore coming back? Any chance we see Will Johnson say, "Screw it, I want to be on a team with Bryce Underwood"? Screw the first round of the NFL draft. I want to play with Bryce Underwood. Any chance we see that?
I personally think that Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland, and Will Johnson will all return to Michigan to play with Bryce Underwood.
Love it. Absolutely love it. National championship, no doubt about it. Can
that right there is the Underwood effect. Like, he just brings everybody with him.
Everybody with him. Oh my gosh. Mika from the Facebook page says he hopes the Don goes for 250 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, look, talking about Donovan Edwards, obviously the year hasn't gone the way that he wanted it to go, hasn't gone the way that anybody wanted it to go. And we've still been waiting for Donovan Edwards to just have this, where is big game Don? And, the last time he was in Columbus, like, that was like his sort of signature legendary moment as a Michigan Wolverine. You don't got to be good every Saturday, Trent. You just got to be good one Saturday. And Michigan hasn't really been good any Saturday at this point. I would argue, like, they've been okay. They've managed to get by. Like, sure, you can beat Michigan State, but anybody can beat Michigan State. That's nothing to really hang your hat on. Like, You just got to be good one Saturday. And if there's one time to put it together, it would be that time in Columbus. And again, it'll avoid, that long streak of winning games on the road. Like, you don't want to, anytime you're putting yourself back in a situation in 2009 and doing things that Rich Rod did, you know, you're not in a good spot. And I think that these players are going to take a lot of pride when they get down to Columbus, regardless of what happens against Northwestern. They're going to want to win that football game. You think we see Will Johnson play against Ohio State, or is he done?
I really do. I mean, I might be optimistic here, but I think Will Johnson will suit up against Ohio State and at least try to play. Like, I don't know. I think that he wants to, I don't think he wants to go out the way that it looks like he's going out. And I think he will try to suit up and play against Ohio State.
What is this in regards to here? Trent's been drinking. Trent, that's funny.
I think it's when I said that Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, and Colson Loveland are coming back.
I see. Trent was high when he said that. I gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's a fun time, again, to be a Michigan football fan. And that feels good. It feels good because it really sucks as a fan, as somebody who covers the program, as a player, as a coach. Nobody likes 5-5. Nobody enjoys 5-5. And with this being a new era of college football with the expanded playoff, we all thought Michigan was going to be in the mix. We all thought that the Wolverines were going to be, at least have a shot to go back to back, or at least have a shot to play for a conference championship. And the fact that that is off the table, and it's been off the table for a while now, it's been difficult, man. But this Bryce Underwood commitment, things feel different. The outlook feels different. The energy feels different. Maybe some of that will carry over into what we see on Saturday, and maybe it'll carry over on November 30th in Columbus. Who knows how that's going to.
Actually an interesting question. Like, do you think the news of Bryce Underwood affects the current team now? Like, do you think that the players on this team now are like pumped up about it? Or do you think they don't really care about a 2025 commitment right now?
I don't think they give a shit for the most. I mean, I think the guys that have the opportunity to play with him are excited about it, but I don't think that the commitment is going to change anything inside the locker room in terms of, how they're approaching this season, or, the energy within the building. Like, yeah, I think that there's some excitement surrounding the recruitment, but I don't know that it's going to have any sort of impact on what we see on Saturdays. And Rico from the Facebook page, this is offensive to me. He says Chris is jealous about Trent getting some shine. It's that bald man chip on his shoulder. Look, first, there's so much wrong with your comment here. There's bald slander, number one. And I didn't say anything about Trent getting some shine. I was pointing out that people were saying that he was drunk and high, and I was trying to figure out what that was about. I give Trent shine all the, well, pause. That doesn't really sound good. I don't want to shine all the time. Let's just get off of that real quick.
Let's move on.
I'm constantly giving Trent shine. Oh boy, here we go. Should we get into
Why don't you clip that out and post it on social media?
Shine Trent every day. Let's get to our. That's right. Why are guys constantly catching strays? See, this is part of what comes along with being we're easy targets. We're easy targets. People just know right where they can go, and we take it, we deal with it, and we come out stronger in the end because of it. That's why bald men are undefeated. We're just simply undefeated. Trent, you know nothing about that. Let's get you bastard. Let's get to Northwestern here as we're over an hour. Look, Trent and I,
everybody cares about.
Trent and I were going to come on a show and try to find a way to spend an hour talking about Northwestern, but we know that really nobody gives a shit about that, considering what happened last night. It's all Bryce Underwood at this point. But I do think, looking ahead to this game, we saw Northwestern, at least early on, they were playing with Ohio State. It looked like they were going to compete, maybe have a chance to knock off the Buckeyes, and then water found its level, and Ohio State walked out with a convincing win. But based on what you saw from from Northwestern against Ohio State, I get it. They're 4-6. But do you maybe have a little more concern about whether or not Michigan can get it done this weekend? How do you see this one playing out?
I think that Michigan loses the game if Michigan allows itself to lose the game. Like, I was looking at the stats, and Michigan has a very bad offense, right? But Northwestern's actually even worse than Michigan at every single level. I mean, Northwestern is not a good team. They try to play physical. which is going back to David Braun, the type of coach he is. But they're not a talented team. And if Michigan, I feel like Michigan figured something out defensively in the second half against Indiana. And if Wink Martindale can call that type of game, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and those guys, if they can shine, I don't see Northwestern doing a whole lot offensively. Then, of course, it goes to the other side of the ball, Michigan's offense. What do we see from it? I have no idea. I have no clue whatsoever. Northwestern doesn't have a great defense. In theory, Michigan should be able to run the football against Northwestern, win the trenches, and it should be a pretty easy game for Michigan. I ultimately have Michigan winning 28-10. I see Northwestern scoring 1 touchdown, but I think it'll be a fairly easy game for the Wolverines.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it would be big. Michigan becomes bowl eligible. They maybe play in the Duke Mayonnaise Bowl or whatever the hell it is they're projected to play in. It's just I don't know what to expect from this Michigan team from week to week. You know, they go out against a team like USC and it looks like they can compete and it looks like they're, maybe that they can salvage something in the year. And then they go and they travel down to Champaign and they play Illinois and they get their asses whooped. Or they play Indiana and they have a shot to knock off a top-rated team, but the offense is just so bad that they can't get any points on the board when they need it most. Play calling has also been an issue. Are they going to put the Wolverines in a position to succeed? We heard from Sharon Moore this week that they are going to go back to sort of what they were doing before, which again is, you're talking about coaching things, that puzzling, Sharon Moore's explanation on the Khalil Mullings thing has just been strange to me this entire time. And it sounds like Khalil Mullings is going to be back in the fold. He's maybe going to try to get some other running backs in. They're maybe going to try to get some younger guys on the field. I think that overall, it's the same thing that we see week in and week out. On paper, Michigan is more talented than Northwestern. Is it going to translate in the game? Are we going to see it put to use? That's the big question mark I have. We know that Michigan typically can go into the half with a lead, but they tend to give up that lead in the second half. I don't know if they're disinterested. I don't know what it is, but I'll say this. It's senior day at Michigan. It's the last time that a lot of these guys are going to play a football game inside of Michigan Stadium. I think they're going to play with a lot of pride. I think that they're going to do everything they can to secure the win. I don't think it's going to be dominant, but I think Michigan comes out on top. I got Michigan winning 24-21 over Northwestern. So a close one in the big house. Dude, to close out the regular season at Michigan Stadium, the last game at Michigan Stadium this season, man, you really want to see them come out with a win. We will be back presumably on Monday to talk about all of it. We'll see if there's any more Bryce Underwood drama. I have a hunch by then we're going to have a few more recruits in the fold for Michigan as well. Until then, appreciate all you guys for joining in. We will see you on Monday at noon.
And she's calling a cab while he's having a smoke. And she's taking a drag. Now they're going to bed. Now my stomach is sick.